My activity is repeated readings, and basically, the purpose of repeated readings is to fully comprehend the story. And instead of focusing on decoding words, the students focus more on what's going on in the story and the main points in the story. And this helps understand how to unravel the meaning of the story. And it helps with making inferences about the characters' motives and how the setting affects the actions and how the author's perspective and different point of view affects. Alright, class, so we're going to read a story called The Skeleton Key. I'm going to read it once to you, and then you have a few questions to answer afterwards. So Eric rang his grandparents' doorbell and silently wished the next 4 hours would go by quickly, and he didn't want to give up his entire Saturday afternoon at his grandparents' house where there was no kids in the neighborhood. "You're right on time," Grandma Bethany said, opening the door. "There's tea and cake in the dining room." Cake! At least the first 10 minutes would go by quickly. Eric hung his coat on the rack by the door and saw a strange-looking key hanging on a hook. "Grandpa Bill, what's that funny key for?" "That's a skeleton key. It opens the best room in the house." Grandpa Bill whispered so no one else could hear. "It's the room I go to when your grandmother tries to make me help with the dishes." "What's so special about the room?" Eric asked. "It's a game room," Grandpa Bill said. "Take the key and see if you can find the room by the time I finish my tea." Eric grabbed the key and stared at it. A skeleton key. It looks old. Eric decided the oldest things in the house were probably upstairs in the walk-up attic. He headed past the dining room and onto the stairs. Grandpa Bill sipped his tea and shook his head. Eric knew that meant he was going the wrong way. He headed back to the front door where he'd find the key. Eric thought about the oldest part of the house. The basement. It's the first part that's built. He rushed to the basement door and looked at the lock. It was different from a normal lock. He slid the key inside and turned it. With a click, the door opened. Eric switched on the light and walked down the stairs. The basement was one giant room with a pool table in the middle and a dartboard on the far wall. "Awesome," Eric said. "Ever learned to play pool?" Grandpa Bill asked, coming downstairs. "No," Eric said. "Well, then grab a cue from the rack and I'll teach you." Eric smiled. The next 4 hours are going to fly by. Alright, so the first question is, what is the setting of the story? So in order to remember what the setting of the story is, you have to go back and reread the first paragraph because that's where the setting normally is. So Eric rang his grandparents' doorbell and silently wished the next 4 hours would go by quickly. So he's at his grandparents' house, and it takes place on a Saturday afternoon. The next question is, why didn't Eric want to visit his grandparents' house at the beginning of the story? So you have to go back and reread. It's also in that first paragraph. And he said he didn't want to give up his entire Saturday afternoon at his grandparents' house where there were no kids in the neighborhood. And then the next question is, why did Eric think they would open the attic door? And so you have to go back to the part where it says where the attic door is, and it says, Eric decided the oldest things in the house were probably upstairs in the walk-up attic. He headed past the dining room and up to the stairs. So he thought the oldest things in the house were in the attic, so he went to go look up in the attic. This activity relates to assessment because it helps with learning how to do reading comprehension skills, which is very useful, especially in the older grades. And so for a test, you could give your students a short passage and then have them answer 5 or 6 questions about the short passage, and that will help them go back and reread the texts and figure out what is the right answer. And then you can also add some inferring questions in there, and that can help your students understand more what is going on in the stories.